The 1920s was a decade that roared with energy, transformation, and tension. It was a time of profound change, a period when the world was emerging from the darkness of war and stepping into a new, modern era. The decade saw a booming economy, rapid technological advancement, social revolutions, and a cultural explosion that would influence generations to come. But it was also a time of great inequality, prohibition, and the seeds of political unrest. This story will take you on a journey through the heart of the 1920s, capturing the major events, cultural shifts, and the lives of ordinary people whose fates were irrevocably shaped by this transformative period in history. Chapter 1. The End of the Great War. The world had barely caught its breath after the First World War when the 1920s arrived. The war had left deep scars on the global landscape, physically, emotionally, and economically. Cities in Europe lay in ruins. Millions of lives had been lost, and the survivors were struggling to find a sense of normalcy. Yet, from the ashes of the war rose the hope for a new dawn, a time of renewal. In the United States, the end of the war in 1918 marked the beginning of the Roaring Twenties. The world's wealthiest nation was about to witness an unprecedented economic boom, a surge of cultural innovation, and a wave of social change that would shift the course of history. For many in the U.S., the decade was defined by a sense of liberation and reinvention. People wanted to forget the horrors of war and embrace life with exuberance. This spirit was embodied in the flapper young women who shed the constraints of traditional femininity, bobbed their hair, smoked, danced, and wore shorter skirts. They became symbols of a new era, a time where traditional social norms were being challenged and reshaped. Chapter 2. Jazz and the Harlem Renaissance. Music was at the heart of the Roaring Twenties, and no genre embodied the era more than jazz. The pulsating rhythms of jazz captivated the hearts and minds of people all over the world. From the underground clubs in New Orleans to the grand ballrooms of New York, jazz music was everywhere. But perhaps nowhere was jazz more vibrant than in Harlem, New York. The neighborhood became a mecca for African-American artists, musicians, writers, and intellectuals, giving birth to the Harlem Renaissance. This cultural movement celebrated Black identity and culture in a way that had never been done before. Figures like Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and Duke Ellington became icons, their work influencing everything from literature to music to politics. For the first time in history, African Americans found themselves at the center of mainstream cultural life, though racism and discrimination were still rampant. The Harlem Renaissance, despite its challenges, brought Black culture to the forefront and laid the groundwork for the civil rights movement that would emerge decades later. Jazz itself was a reflection of the Roaring Twenties ethos, spontaneous, innovative, and rebellious. It rejected the formalities of classical music in favor of improvisation, energy, and freedom. Just as the nation was breaking free from the restraints of the past, so too was jazz breaking free from the classical traditions. Chapter 3. Prohibition and the Rise of Organized Crime. While the decade was filled with celebration, it was also marked by contradictions and challenges. One of the most significant events was the passage of the Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which prohibited the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcoholic beverages. Prohibition was supposed to be a moral victory, an effort to combat alcoholism and improve public health. But instead, it led to the opposite. With alcohol banned, a thriving black market emerged. Speakeasies, illegal bars, that operated in secret sprang up in every major city. These underground clubs became the epicenter of the roaring Twenties nightlife, where people could escape the restrictions of prohibition and enjoy the music, dance, and libations. Jazz and speakeasies went hand in hand, as both represented a defiance of social norms. But with this surge in illegal activity came the rise of organized crime. Figures like Al Capone became infamous, controlling the illegal alcohol trade in Chicago and other cities. The gangster era reached its peak in the 1920s, as criminals amassed wealth and power while law enforcement struggled to keep up. Capone's reign of terror and his eventual conviction for tax evasion became the stuff of legend. Despite the growing influence of organized crime, Prohibition also laid the foundation for a future movement toward legalizing alcohol and shifting the focus to regulating rather than criminalizing vice.